The medieval era was a time of knights, chivalry, and plenty of intrigue in royal courts. And while we often focus on the kings and queens who ruled during this period, it's also important to remember the individuals who shared their names. Today we're going to look at some of history's most intriguing tales and uncover the shocking truth behind the lives of medieval kings and queens, from forbidden romance to hidden identities. You won't want to miss these royal mishaps. Eleanor of Aquitaine, the Duchy of Aquitaine, was one of the most powerful noble families in medieval Europe. And when Eleanor's father died in 1152, she inherited the duchy at the age of 15. Shortly after her father's death, she married her cousin, King Louis VII of France, but the marriage was not a happy one. Louis wanted a subservient wife who would stay in the background and support him, while Eleanor desired a more active role in politics. This conflict eventually led to the annulment of their marriage. However, Eleanor's story doesn't end there. She soon found herself at the center of another royal scandal when she eloped with England's King Henry II. Despite the secrecy surrounding their marriage, rumors quickly spread throughout the kingdom. When Louis heard about the marriage, he was furious. As Aquitaine was still technically under his rule, he assembled an army and marched on the territory, forcing Henry to flee to Normandy. Although Eleanor had broken no laws by marrying Henry, she was considered a traitor because she had violated the terms of her annulment with Louis, which stipulated that she could not remarry anyone within the royal family. To make matters worse, Henry and Eleanor's marriage was unpopular in England. The English people saw Eleanor as a foreigner who had betrayed them by marrying their king, and they blamed her for the high taxes that Henry imposed to fund his wars against Louis. In 1164, Henry had Eleanor imprisoned in Bletsoe Castle for 16 years after accusing her of having an affair with her own son, Richard. But the truth of the situation may have been far more scandalous than Henry was willing to admit. While it's true that Eleanor spent 16 years in prison, recent research suggests that she may have actually been held captive rather than imprisoned as punishment for an affair. Historian Ralph Turner argued that the accusations of adultery were fabricated by Henry to cover up his own infidelity and get rid of his wife. According to Turner, Eleanor had become too powerful and independent for Henriette's liking, and he was eager to find a way to get rid of her. He used the rumors of her affair with Richard as a convenient excuse to imprison her, knowing that the English people would support his actions. Unfortunately, Eleanor never regained her freedom and died in 1204. Richard the Lionheart is a legendary medieval warrior known for his bravery in battle. But what many people don't know is that Richard was actually half black. During the Crusades, Richard fought alongside other European Christians against the Muslims in the Middle East. However, his military campaigns were not motivated by religious zeal. Instead, Richard was interested in expanding his territory and gaining more power. Despite his martial prowess, Richard's record as a military leader is actually quite mixed. In 1189, he led an English force of 30,000 men into battle against the French, but they were defeated by the superior French cavalry. Undeterred, Richard continued to fight the French and the siege of Acre, but it wasn't until 1192 that he finally achieved victory. After conquering Jerusalem in 1187, Richard set out to take the city back from the Muslims. It took 2 years, but eventually his efforts paid off and he captured the city. However, Richard's victory was short-lived as the Muslims regrouped and launched a counterattack. Realizing that he was outnumbered, Richard fled to England in 1193. Richard's adventures didn't stop there. In 1194, he sailed to France and began a campaign to conquer Normandy. However, he was forced to return home after his brother John seized control of Normandy in his absence. Richard then embarked on a crusade to the Holy Land in 1197, but his military record during this time was lackluster. Despite his reputation as a great warrior, Richard only achieved one significant victory during his entire career. In 1198, he was captured by the Austrian Duke after a battle near Vienna and held for ransom. The Duke demanded that Richard pay 10,000 marks of gold, an enormous sum of money at the time. To raise the money, Richard had to mortgage castles and abbeys throughout England. Eventually, he was able to secure his release and return to England in 1199. There he died of wounds sustained in battle. leaving behind a legacy of martial prowess and unfulfilled potential. Henry VIII. Henry VIII is perhaps one of the most well-known kings in English history. He was the second Tudor monarch, reigning from 1509 to 1547, and he's remembered for his 6 wives, his contribution to the English Renaissance, and the establishment of the Church of England. But what many people don't know is that Henry was also a talented musician. In fact, Henry was so passionate about music that he played several instruments, including the lute, the harp, and the keyboard. He composed his own music and even wrote a book of carols. Sadly, none of his musical compositions survived, so we can't hear them today. Henry's passion for music may have stemmed from his mother's influence. Elizabeth of York was a great patron of the arts, and she encouraged her son's interest in music. Despite his musical talents, Henry's legacy is somewhat tarnished by his infamous wives. He married Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, and Catherine Parr. Some of these marriages were more successful than others, but all of them had an impact on English history. For example, Henry's desire to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon led to the creation of the Church of England, as he wanted to marry one of his advisors instead. While Henry is often remembered as a tyrant who persecuted Protestants, he was actually the first Tudor monarch to embrace the Protestant Reformation. He broke with the Roman Catholic Church and declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England in 1534. This decision had far-reaching consequences, not only for England but for the course of Christian history. Henry's actions paved the way for the rise of Protestantism and the decline of Catholicism in England. He also implemented major changes in the religious practices and beliefs of the country. However, Henry's religious views were complex, and he didn't always adhere to the principles of Protestantism. For example, he still believed in the doctrine of transubstantiation, which is the belief that the bread and wine used in communion actually become the body and blood of Christ. In addition to his religious beliefs, Henry was also known for his love of food. He was a large man, standing 6 feet tall and weighing over 400 pounds, and he had a voracious appetite. His diet consisted of a variety of foods, including meat, fish, fruit, and vegetables. However, he was particularly fond of pastries and sweets. Henry's love of food may have contributed to his ill health in later life, as he suffered from obesity and gout. Despite his flaws, Henry VIII is remembered as one of the most iconic monarchs in English history. His contributions to the arts, his religious reforms, and his tumultuous personal life have made him a subject of fascination for centuries. Bloody Mary, Mary Tudor, was the daughter of Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. She became Queen of England in July of 1553, succeeding her half-brother Edward VI. Mary's reign was marked by religious persecution, particularly of Protestants, and she earned the nickname Bloody Mary due to the hundreds of people who were executed during her reign. Despite her violent reputation, Mary was a complex figure who faced numerous challenges during her lifetime. She was born out of wedlock and was illegitimate according to the laws of England. Her mother, Catherine, was also treated poorly by Henry, who divorced her and married Anne Boleyn. However, Mary's legitimacy was restored when Henry's will was read after his death. She converted to Catholicism, which made her unpopular in England, where Protestantism was the dominant religion. Additionally, Mary was seen as foreign and unfit to be queen because she was raised in France. Throughout her life, Mary was involved in multiple scandals that further tarnished her public image. She was accused of having an inappropriate relationship with her former music teacher, Antonio Perez, and she had a miscarriage in 1504, which led to rumors that she was barren. These accusations and rumors were used against her by her enemies to undermine her authority and delegitimize her claim to the throne. Despite these challenges, Mary persevered and went on to marry Philip II of Spain in 1554. The wedding was a lavish affair and was intended to strengthen ties between England and Spain. However, the marriage was childless, and Mary's inability to produce an heir contributed to the growing unrest among her subjects. As queen, Mary faced several rebellions, including the Western Rebellion of 1553 and the Northern Rebellion of 1569. These rebellions were largely put down, but they demonstrated the instability of Mary's rule. She was ultimately succeeded by her half-sister Elizabeth I. In November of 1558, Mary died believing that her cousin Lady Jane Grey, not Elizabeth, was the rightful heir to the throne. Despite the controversies surrounding her life and reign, Mary Tudor remains a fascinating figure in English history. Her struggles for legitimacy, her religious convictions, and her tumultuous relationships continue to captivate historians and the general public alike. Which of these royal figures surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more royal mishaps and historical tales.